Welcome to Generation 144K, restoring true education one child at a time. We are now sharing the screen with you and invite you to 144,000teachers.org. And as we introduce you to this website, you also will have an opportunity to visit Generation 144K. And this particular website and this particular page in the menu brings you to the homeschooling and tutoring program. Very unique program. 144K stand for 144,000, the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. Revelation chapter 14, verse 4. And as we scroll now down to the carousel of the picture showing the children that are homeschooled with their many activities and also with being able to be with their parents, being able to be helped by the main teachers that the Bible wanted the children to be instructed with. Now we are setting it up as exactly what it was supposed to and involving, of course, true education, restoring then the institution of education and family. We invite you to look at the video welcoming you to Generation 144K, restoring true education one child at a time. And it's also to show you what these children and what your children will be learning as we present them the program with true education. So as we go a little bit further, now we're going to enter into another important part is what is the education that we offer to your children? And this has to do which books are we using? Well, of course, with the Bible, because it's an entirely based true education program. We also use the King James Version and the book, The Spirit of Prophecy, written by Mrs. Ellen G. White. These books, along with the other one that we will present in a short time, form the foundational library of Generation 144K. Now, as we look at, and Child Guidance is one of those books, part of the Spirit of Prophecy. Now, we will invite you now to look at these books, especially this Living Fountains or Broken Cistern from E.A. Sutherland. You can look at the introduction, but we are choosing right now to show you the whole book, which we're not going to read here, of course, but we will introduce you to not only the introduction, but also the chapters, being the material, the contents of this wonderful book, Living Fountains or Broken Cistern. To do so, we have to increase the fonts because it's a little bit small and it's going to make it easier to read. And without further ado, we will enter now into the page for the book itself, Living Fountains or Broken Cisterns. An Educational Problem for Protestant. The title of the book comes from Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13. My people have committed two evils, says the Lord. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Very, very sad quote in effect, because it talks about the true and the false education side by side. We may want to increase still a little bit the font to make it even enlarged, make it simple. Now it's better. And we're going to proceed in reading it for you and introducing you after to the chapters. There are few books which treat of the history of education and fewer which attempt to show the part that the educational work has ever borne in the upbuilding of nations. That religion is inseparably connected with and upheld by the system of education maintained by its advocates has been recognized by many historians in a casual way. But to the author's knowledge, no one has hitherto made this thought the subject of a volume. In teaching the history of education and the growth of Protestantism, the close relationship ever existing between the latter and true methods of education led to a careful study of the educational system of the nations of the earth, especially of those nations which have exerted a lasting influence upon the world's history. The present volume is the result of that study. Daubigné says that in the Reformation, the school was early placed beside the church. And these two great institutions, so powerful to regenerate the nations, were equally reanimated by it. It was by a close alliance with learning that the Reformation entered into the world. So Martin Luther and Protestantism was established because of true education and on true education. True education, Protestantism, and republicanism form a threefold union which defies the powers of earth to overthrow. But today, the Protestant churches are growing weak. Remember, this was written in 1900, 120 years ago. This author declares that the Protestant church by then was already becoming weak. Imagine in 2020. And the boasted freedom of America's democracy is being exchanged for monarchical principles of government, mainly like a monarchy, the same way that it was before the French Revolution, for example, when they destroyed the French monarchy. This weakness is rightly attributed by some to the want of proper education. The same cause of degeneracy would doubtless be assigned by many others, where effects traced to their source. The author has attempted by a generous use of historical quotation to so arrange facts that the reader will see that the hope of Protestantism and the hope of republicanism lies in the proper education of the youth. And this is particular to the government of the United States, but it can be applied anywhere around the world. It does not keep it just for the United States. And that this true education is found in the principle delivered by Jehovah to his chosen people, the Jew. That is what was afterwards more fully demonstrated by the master teacher Christ, that the Reformation witnessed a revival of these principles, and that Protestants today, if true to their faith, will educate their children in accordance with these same principles. And this is what Generation 144K is proposing and is doing. Due credit is given to the authors quoted, a list of whose names appears at the end of the volume. A complete index, renders this work easy of reference. Now, as we look at the contents, which will give you a brief and a kind of an idea at least of the book, chapter 1 would be God, the source of wisdom. Number 2, the heavenly school. Number 3, the Edenic school. 4, the history of 15 centuries. 5, the school of Abraham. 6, education in Israel. 7, the educational system of the pagan world. 8, Christ, the educator of educators. 9, education in the early church. 10, the papacy, an educational problem. 11, education of the Middle Ages. 12, the 16th century Reformation and educational reform. 13, the reaction after the educational Reformation. 14, America and the educational problem. 15, again along the same way, America and the educational problem. And 16 and 17, Christian education. And this is all of the these are the chapters that you will find in this wonderful book. And we encourage you to read this book in order to increase your knowledge of true education and in order to be a true teacher under true education. And this was presented especially for parents, teachers, and tutors.